and I think you'll find, officer, that you are in a great deal of trouble. Chapter 1. The Honourable Phryne Fisher sat at her Bechstein grand piano, a frown marring her Dutch doll features. Around her, all was as it should be. Green, purple and white walls formed the backdrop to her piano, its ebony polished to a high sheen. A sage-green sofa and 2 matching lounge chairs were arranged in a semicircle nearby. A tea table stood ready to bear champagne and canapes at a moment's notice. A generous wood-panelled fireplace held court beneath its capacious chimney. The floor was covered in a new sculptured carpet, supplied by the Lin family, in blue, grey and crimson. Vases of red roses stood here and there in shapely art decorative vases, in improbable shades of blue, green and purple, filling the parlour with their fragrance. From outside the window, a warm afternoon sun shed its radiant beams on her score. A copy of Cole Porter's Let's Misbehave, which she had purchased in a music shop the previous week. She considered the sentiments apposite. It might well be that good girls went to heaven, but they had a dull enough time of it on earth. It might well be that good girls went to heaven, but they had a dull enough time of it on earth. She moved smoothly through the opening chords, G7, F9, G7, C major 7, C, and G augmented 5, and the furrows on her brow deepened. She paused, her fingers resting on the ivory keys. The 5th was by no means as augmented as it ought to be. The D sharp was as blunt as a butter knife, without the common courtesy to backslide to D natural. It had instead vanished into the tiny crack between the keys, and the bass notes seemed oddly unsure of themselves. For the present, there was nothing doing with the piano. She closed the lid gently, then rose from the stool and moved to recline on the sofa. Mr. Butler appeared without the necessity for Phryne to ring, and inquired if Madam would be wanting anything. "A gin and tonic, if you would, Mr. B." Mr. B inclined his head very slightly and melted away into the corridor, to be replaced by Dot, dressed in her customary shades of brown, and with an expression of similarly glum hue. Phryne waved her companion to a vacant chair. "Dot, you look as if you've lost a winning lottery ticket in the wash. What's wrong?" Dot blinked, sat herself down on the chair's edge, and placed her hands in her lap. She opened her mouth to speak, closed it again, and clasped her hands together. "It's nothing, miss," she murmured. Dorothy Williams had been Phryne's lady's maid, companion, and assistant since Phryne's arrival in Melbourne a year before, and what a year it had been! Dot had been kidnapped, terrorised, and driven much too fast in her employer's Hispano-Suiza. She did not regard herself as courageous, but she had bravely endured all these perils for the sake of Miss Fisher. She looked at her now with devotion. Phryne wore a stunningly beautiful emerald silk dress, embroidered with a spray of multicoloured orchids, and Dot's downcast demeanour brightened momentarily at the sight before lapsing once again into gloom. Phryne fixed her with a look of unusual severity. "Come on, Dot, out with it. Something has upset you." Dot gazed at her employer solemnly. She reached into her reticule, drew out a piece of plain cardboard, and handed it to Phryne without comment. The uppermost side was blank. Phryne turned it over to find a single word in block letters, clearly cut from a newspaper, had been glued onto the card with mucilage. Phryne sniffed at the offending object. The glue was not quite dry, indicating that it had been assembled that very day. The message was brief and to the point. "Repent." "Where did you find this, Dot?" "It was left in the letterbox."